Justine Vlamink is a Belgian anthropologist and doctoral researcher at the Université Catholique de Leuven, UC Leuven, where she is affiliated with the Laboratoire d'Anthropologie Prospective, LAAP. Trained in social and cultural anthropology, her work focuses on contemporary spiritual movements, embodiment, and self-transformation practices in Europe. Since 2017, she has conducted immersive ethnographic research within the Rainbow family of living light, exploring how ideals of freedom, authenticity, and healing intersect with subtle forms of social regulation. Her broader research examines how new spiritualities and alternative communities reflect and reinterpret neoliberal ideas of self-development, showing how personal liberation often coexists with moral and bodily discipline. This article is an ethnographic look at Europe's Rainbow Family gatherings, month-long, leaderless camps inspired by 1960s counterculture and New Age spirituality, showing a core tension. People come seeking total freedom, healing, and authentic living in nature, yoga, meditation, plant remedies, communal meals, workshops, yet the scene quietly creates its own rules about how a liberated body should look and behave: nudity, nonstop optimism, intense hugs, visible emotional release, ascetic living. Through fieldwork since 2017, the author describes rituals, outdoor hardship, and self-improvement practices that many experience as transformative, but also notes social pressure to conform, for example, privileging energy over expertise, downplaying illness, treating self-discipline as spiritual freedom. The punchline: Rainbow life promises libertarian autonomy, but in practice it blends self-help ideals with communal norms, channeling personal liberation into a shared and somewhat standardized way of being. The Rainbow family was founded in 1972 during a 4-day gathering in Colorado that brought together nearly 20,000 people, including various libertarian and spiritual groups, Christians, neo-pagans, Hindus, New Age followers, etc., who were seeking a way of life that broke completely with modern capitalist society. It was started by young pacifist activists from the educated white middle class, many of whom had been involved in the American countercultural movements of the 1960s, and they were later joined by veterans of the Vietnam War. The event, which was free and intended to be one of a kind, aimed to create a space where people could express a sincere desire to live in peace and harmony on Earth. That first successful gathering inspired many others, now known as Rainbow Gatherings, which take place several times a year all over the world, each lasting about a month. The Rainbow family has become one of the largest utopian and libertarian communities in North America, and since its first European gathering in 1983, thousands of people across Europe have joined as well. Membership in this universal family is a conscious choice rather than something one is born into. It developed and endured through ideas inherited from the 1960s Cultural Revolution, the libertarian and communal spirit that influenced a segment of educated, middle-class white youth in both the United States and later Europe. The Rainbows see themselves as the direct descendants of the hippie movement, seeking to carry on its ideals of freedom, authenticity, living in harmony with nature, and focusing on inner life. Even if they don't always identify themselves directly with the New Age label, they clearly share its spirituality, the belief that humanity can be transformed through ongoing personal work aimed at freeing the body and mind. They embrace a holistic view of human beings, believing that each individual is part of a larger cosmic energy. Through personal growth, people can radiate positive energy that contributes to the balance and harmony of the planet. Based on this understanding of humanity and its connection to the world, Rainbow gatherings are meant to be transformative and liberating experiences that lead, for most participants, to deep personal healing. These temporary gatherings, held in nature, provide a chance to go beyond oneself, through living outdoors and exchanging therapeutic practices, and to find harmony with one's inner nature and the cosmos. This article, based on ethnographic research conducted since 2017 on the Rainbow family in Europe, aims to describe the sensory and social aspects of these gatherings, with special attention to their internal contradictions. The body plays a central role. It is both the main tool for ongoing spiritual self-work and the visible result of that effort. There is a particular way of appearing and behaving that signals liberation, For example, bodies are often fit, thin, uncovered, and uninhibited. Thus, the physical expression of the rainbow community moves between an ideal of freedom and the reality of social norms that develop within the gatherings. This can be seen in the way practices become uniform, and in how certain behaviors and ways of speaking are accepted as legitimate or authentic. In Europe, rainbow gatherings range from a few dozen people, mainly at national events like those in Belgium, to several thousand at the big Europe-wide gatherings. For about a month, participants try out a self-managed communal life. Everything runs on individual responsibility and willingness to take on roles that help with daily tasks. There's no central authority and no leader. During these gatherings, time is treated very loosely. People organize their day according to their feeling or energy. Individuals are encouraged to act with awareness and in line with their desires, intuitions, and emotional/physical state, rather than out of duty to the group. For many, rainbow gatherings are a chance to escape group pressures where you have to do things. So people pitch in as they wish, gathering wood to keep the central campfire going, cooking for everyone, or maintaining the shitpits, large trench toilets. There are 2 daily meals, one in early afternoon and one late in the evening, which take up a good part of the day, especially because they're preceded by a fairly long ritual celebrating the principle of unity that's said to unconditionally bind the family and connect them to the cosmos. In the afternoons, participants freely offer workshops. These share therapeutic body techniques and knowledge focused on exploring one's artistic, spiritual, physical, or psychological potential, as well as learning about the surrounding nature, especially its healing possibilities. Most workshops center on body care, healing, often with plants, and managing emotions, especially fear that holds people back. Gathering sites have to meet certain criteria. They should be isolated, untouched by human activity, and have access to drinking/cooking water and to a river or lake for bathing. The European gatherings, held each year in a different country, usually take place in remote areas that often require several hours of hiking to reach. Recent ones were in a forest by a large lake in Swedish Lapland, 2019, and in 2 valleys, one lush in the Polish Carpathians, 2018, the other steep and nearly 2,000 meters high in Italy's Friulian Dolomites, 2017. In Belgium, where I closely followed the Rainbow family's activities, these ideal criteria often clash with the realities of a small, densely populated country. The last Belgian gathering, in 2017, was held on the grounds of an old mill. The owner allowed it in exchange for some repair work. Some participants used the village nearby to run errands or have a drink at a cafe. A marked hiking path ran along the site, so passers-by sometimes stumbled upon nude participants. The ideal of an ascetic lifestyle far from civilization wasn't fully achievable there. Choosing the place is central to the experience. The location, how isolated it is, and the energy it's said to have, helps people feel they're crossing from one world to another, from Babylon, Rainbow's term for capitalist society, into the Rainbow family. That shift isn't only about geography. It's signaled the moment you arrive, especially at the makeshift welcome center near the parking area, built with stretched tarps. You're often greeted with long hugs and an enthusiastic welcome home, sister. At gatherings, everyone instantly becomes a brother or sister, and interactions are framed as unconditional and authentic. The dominant look of participants, often slender bodies and a specific clothing style, natural materials like thick cotton or heavy wool, colorful but weathered, also sets the atmosphere, along with the setting itself. Besides the many tents, you see teepees, yurts, domes, and green tarps dotting the wide pastures where the gatherings take place. The Rainbow family fits what Linda Woodhead and Paul Healers call subjective life spirituality, which puts personal experience and inner life at the center. Beliefs matter less than practice and direct experience. Seekers connect with their inner depths and feel spirituality flowing through their bodies, emotions, and relationships. In that sense, Rainbow gatherings are similar to modern transformative dance practices like biodanza. Such practices, like much of New Age and self-development, provide a setup that gives participants powerful personal experiences that they treat as a kind of higher authority for shaping their identities. Like those dance sessions, Rainbow gatherings are extraordinary, outside everyday life, and are used as spaces to try out a freer self. They're designed to create the conditions for that liberation, both in how it's felt and how it shows up outwardly. The focus is on rediscovering, through the senses, a more authentic relationship to others, to the environment, and to one's own body. Studying an event-based community that centers spirituality on experience and subjectivity meant using an immersive approach. I took an active part in rainbow gatherings. This aligns with Pierre-Joseph Laurent's view that the researcher's subjectivity is a key tool in participant observation, helping to cross the cultural boundary between the researcher's society and the group being studied, and back again, while keeping that subjectivity under control through constant reflection on one's own assumptions. Rainbow gatherings express, through different practices and forms, a particular view of the human body, as a channel of sensations, constantly traversed by an inner flow of energy that naturally keeps a person healthy and well. The body is seen as having its own intelligence and inner power, giving humans self-healing abilities that they've simply forgotten. Bart, one of the co-founders of the first rainbow gatherings in Belgium, explains it this way. We're trapped in programming and fear. All the links and connections are already there, but the mind is programmed into another story, the story of Babylon. The body and life itself aren't part of that story. We all feel everything, but the mind, the spirit, isn't up to understanding it. 2017. In people's stories, there's often talk of a passage from childhood to adulthood, which is also seen as a departure from a natural state. This isn't tied to a specific historical time, but is said to have happened with the rise of Babylon, a vague term used to represent modern, materialistic society. In this shift, from child to adult, from before to after Babylon, people are thought to have lost touch with their natural essence. Rational thinking, wage labor, consumerism, and the fears that come with them, fear of lacking, of failing, of not being enough, are said to stifle humanity's true nature and its innate capacities. According to this view, each person must awaken their consciousness to this potential and work on themselves to make it flourish. Almost everyone I spoke with sees self-work, inner work, as absolutely essential, even vital. Personal growth is a way of life. Most of them practice meditation and yoga daily as disciplines that help manage emotions and reach higher states of well-being. They also take part in events that share the same core values as the Rainbow Movement, seeking a deep connection with nature, caring for the body, and striving for authenticity in one's relationship with oneself, others, and the environment. Participating in rainbow gatherings continues this ongoing search for liberating and transformative experiences. In Rainbow, people say they learn to be truly themselves, shine in their full splendor, drop the mask, and feel loved. The motto could be, "You're free to be yourself." The abundance of workshops focused on inner growth, the relaxed and non-hierarchical atmosphere, the immersion in nature, and the practice of simple, ascetic living are all seen as deeply healing and inspiring reasons to come, and to keep coming back. Many participants describe these gatherings as bringing about a profound healing of the self. Workshops at rainbow gatherings include things like mantra chanting, hypnosis, dynamic yoga, acro-yoga, laughter yoga, group meditation, reading the Mayan calendar, learning about wild plants and their healing powers, womb blessings, exploring one's inner child, learning tantra, women's Taoist practices, energy connection rituals with trees, and shamanic sweat lodge ceremonies. This wide variety of daily workshops is a central part of the rainbow experience. They all aim to cultivate constant self-awareness, emotional balance, and body care, offering a space and structure for working on oneself. The idea behind these activities is that each person's happiness and well-being depend on their own effort and willpower to maintain themselves in a lasting state of inner balance. Usually, someone volunteers to share knowledge or techniques they've gained through personal experience, training, or reading books or websites. These teachings are often presented as coming from ancient traditions, universal sciences, or authentic wisdom that transcend cultural differences and belong to all humanity. No one claims to be an expert. Instead, they call themselves a facilitator, guide, or intermediary. Their legitimacy isn't judged by education or credentials, rather, it's about whether their energy feels right. You often hear things like, I'm not going to that workshop, I don't feel their energy. This vague but powerful sense of energy acts as the main criterion for deciding who is qualified to lead. During workshops, responsibility lies mostly with the participants. They must be physically and energetically ready to receive what's being offered. If someone feels nothing or reacts badly, it's assumed that the workshop just isn't for them or that they're not ready yet, not awakened enough. In most of these workshops, the focus is on inner experience, which must be expressed through the body. Participants are constantly encouraged to let go, release fear, and get out of the mind. These phrases come up everywhere, not only in workshops but also in casual conversations, and they form part of a shared ritual framework that shapes how people are expected to behave and feel. During the 2019 European gathering in Swedish Lapland, for example, I joined a dynamic meditation workshop led by a facilitator wearing a clown nose. He told us to let go of our fears, get rid of intrusive thoughts, and let our inner child come out. For about an hour, we weren't allowed to open our eyes, supposedly to help us connect with our inner self, witness what happens inside us, and avoid being distracted by others. The man with the red nose said he was our only mirror during the session, and that he could step in at any time to help us let go, or remove anyone who wasn't able to surrender fully to the process. Opening one's eyes, for example, could lead to being excluded. The session unfolded in 5 stages. First, we breathed rapidly through the nose, following the facilitator's rhythm. Then, we were told to relax the body and let it move naturally, shoulders rising and falling with each breath. Next came the explosion phase. We were told to go crazy, let out deep internal screams, and move however we felt like moving. Soon, the space filled with shouting. Some people rolled on the ground, others jumped or danced wildly. After about 15 minutes, the facilitator shifted to the next stage. He raised his arms and shouted rhythmically, "How? How?" and everyone copied him. Finally, we were told to freeze completely, to stop whatever movement we were doing and stay still for several minutes. The session ended with cries of joy and intense hugging all around. After such workshops, participants always gather in a circle to share their feelings. The atmosphere is often deeply emotional. Speaking softly and slowly, as if to show inner calm or bliss, people describe what they experienced. Common words include warmth, immense joy, beauty, power, and deep healing. These rainbow workshops are built around a structured process, a set of prescribed actions meant to make participants feel and express emotions in specific ways. In the example described, there's an unspoken standard of what a true state of letting go should look like, and the facilitator becomes the judge of whether someone achieves it or not. In the end, how the emotion is expressed, the visible, physical release, matters more than the emotion itself. For most participants, rainbow gatherings are a chance to experience what they call a natural way of living, a return to simplicity and to the roots of life itself. It's seen as an escape from the routine of urban living, which pushes people away from their instincts and forces them into unnatural rhythms. Life outdoors, being naked, exposed to the sun, breathing fresh air, walking long distances every day, chopping wood for the fire, and eating vegan food, sometimes raw, is described as a way to reconnect with one's body and its real needs. Julie, a woman in her 30s who has attended rainbow gatherings since 2014, and Bart, mentioned earlier, both express this idea of an empowering return to the essential. In rainbow, you're closer to simplicity, to the essence. You understand what you really need in life: food, doing things that make you happy, connecting with others, and feeling good in nature. Julie, 2019. The most important thing is to rediscover our unity and our connection with nature, and for everyone to eventually find that within themselves. To end up sitting around a fire, singing songs, drinking spring water, cooking vegetarian meals, eating in a circle, all the things we do at Rainbow. Everyone ends up discovering that. Everyone ends up understanding, ah yes, we walk barefoot, ah yes, we do yoga in the morning. That's the life we discover here. Our main work is to create the space to understand that. Bart, 2018. The search for healing necessarily involves what one anthropologist calls a first-person ecology, an inner ecology. It's about reconnecting with one's wild roots, true self, and essence, and reclaiming one's place in the community of living beings through union with nature, recognizing and respecting its laws. This is why rainbow gatherings are held in remote, wild places. Such locations are seen as helping people awaken this self-awareness. Through these physical experiences, living in nature, facing the elements, enduring discomfort, participants are led to push past their limits and the social norms that shape how they view their bodies. The experience is considered healing. Like other nature-based practices, it's said to awaken the senses. The sounds, smells, textures, light, and colors of nature stimulate the body and open new perceptions of self and of one's relationship to the world. The 2017 European Gathering perfectly illustrates this drive for self-overcoming and transformative union with nature. That summer, the event was held in Tremonti di Sopra, a small village in northeastern Italy near the Austrian and Slovenian borders, at about 2,000 meters altitude in the Friulian Dolomites National Park. To reach the site, there were two options. The easier one was to take a van up a mountain road to a drop-off point near the top. From there, people had to walk 8 kilometers downhill to the camp, while their belongings were brought later by tractor. The tougher route involved hiking up 10 kilometers of steep, rocky trails with an 800-meter elevation gain. Along this path were two welcome centers, one halfway up and one about 2 hours from the camp. The final stretch was so steep that you had to use your hands to climb. It took between 4 and 6 hours to reach the valley where the camp was set up. In total, over 4,000 people made the climb of all ages. Some carried heavy equipment like teepees and thick canvas tents, parents hiked with children, and some mothers carried babies in slings on their fronts while hauling backpacks on their backs. 3 pregnant women even completed the trek and later gave birth at the camp. The site was completely isolated, no cell reception, no contact with the outside world, except for a walkie-talkie reserved for extreme emergencies. Because of the remote location, food supply missions were difficult. Volunteers had to hike to nearby villages to bring back provisions, so food was rationed to prevent burnout. Each person received small portions, a few spoonfuls of a simple mix of vegetables, legumes and grains, like rice, pasta, or potatoes. Yet, this shortage wasn't seen as a hardship. Many viewed it positively, as a chance to break free from overconsumption, to go beyond hunger, seen as a mental construct, and to focus on what's essential. Julie recalled the joy she felt that month in Italy. "I really felt so good there. 1 month totally cut off from the city. Just the elements, just nature. You become more aware of your sensitivity. Then after a month, when you go back down the valley, you see a car and you're like, what is that? Oh right, I remember, that's a car." You really forget. You think, wow, this is so real. 2019. After the gathering, many participants wrote on Facebook about how the mountain had pushed them to confront their body's limits. They spoke of feeling a power, a strength within, awakened by their contact with nature, however harsh it was. Climbing the mountain, enduring hunger, and surviving freezing nights were described as openings to new possibilities, moments that redefined what they believed their bodies were capable of. There are people for whom it's their first rainbow. You can tell when they arrive. But that's okay. It's so different from what we're used to. You can't really be prepared. Every rainbow. You learn and keep adapting. Lucas, European Rainbow Gathering, Sweden, 2019. The rainbow family's ideal of freedom, expressed through the collective experiment of a libertarian way of life, and the constant self-work it demands, is, paradoxically, built on a set of shared expectations and norms that define what it means to be liberated. Over time, people begin to internalize these shared models, embodied ways of acting and feeling that become second nature through repetition and through the influence of the community's setting. These ways of being freely oneself are recognized not just by appearance, but through physical and emotional cues, the way one moves, feels, and expresses oneself. The repeated encouragements to let go, heard in workshops and daily interactions, the prevailing body aesthetics, the ascetic lifestyle, the shared belief in the body's self-healing power, and total immersion in nature, all these elements form the framework of rainbow life. Together, They create the conditions for a kind of conformity, a standard of how to be authentically free. For instance, at rainbow gatherings, nudity, frequent physical touch, smiling faces, and relaxed, fluid movements are all markers of this embodied freedom. There's no rule requiring nudity, but wearing a swimsuit to bathe can draw looks or questions. Many see nudity as a natural adaptation to the environment, as Brigitte explains. Being naked is one of the body's natural needs, like drinking, eating, peeing, pooping, all that. The contact with air, with the earth. At my first rainbow, it happened gradually. It was hot, and I started undressing because it just felt easier. And of course, another natural need is to cover yourself when it's cold. 2018. No one forces physical contact either, but touching and being touched are normalized behaviors. People always greet each other with a hug. For the purists, it's left shoulder to left shoulder, heart to heart. You're supposed to take your time so you can feel the other's energy through your own. The author recalls once ending a hug too early. The other person seemed surprised and said, "Wow, what's that? You from the city or what?" The remark is telling. By pointing to the city, a symbol of the mainstream society that rainbows reject, the speaker implied that her behavior, a quick, restrained hug, didn't fit the rainbow spirit. In doing so, he was enforcing a subtle social norm. In extreme cases, rare, but revealing, one can see how social control operates in the name of shared beliefs about the self and the world. During the 2019 European gathering in Poland, an event made this especially clear. An infectious disease, shigellosis, spread through the camp, causing diarrhea, vomiting, dehydration, and stomach pain. The healing tipi, Rainbow's equivalent of a first aid center, was full of people lying on the ground, weak and ill, receiving charcoal capsules and energy healing. People with severe cramps were carried off by volunteer medics and taken to hospitals. Despite the obvious outbreak, no official announcement came from the organizers, the Polish Rainbow family, that year. Rumors circulated that local health authorities were urging the group to end the gathering to stop the contagion. It wasn't until August 5, just a week before the end, that a public message was delivered during the communal meal, warning that the water might be contaminated. But stopping the event, as authorities had requested, was out of the question. "We're a community. We'll make sure everything goes fine," said one of the Polish organizers. The organizers' silence, and the collective decision to carry on despite the warnings, reflected a shared denial of responsibility and a tendency to downplay the situation. Many participants distrusted the emergency services, claiming the authorities were spreading fear to sabotage the gathering. Within that mindset, expressing distress or concern became difficult, it could even be frowned upon. This created pressure to hide discomfort and avoid seeking conventional medical help. At one information session for those with symptoms, a man hesitantly spoke after an hour. "My baby's been pooping black and vomiting for 2 days. I don't know what to do. He's in the tent." It was a hot day. A woman urged him to go to the hospital immediately. Dazed, he said he'd go after the meeting, until the shocked faces around him made him leave right away. This incident shows the subtle pressure exerted by the group, a kind of collective injunction to let go and trust the process. Certain behaviors are quietly judged as legitimate or not. Showing worry, being critical, or turning to Western medicine and antibiotics can be seen as wrong, even as a failure to trust in the body's natural ability to heal. Illness itself is often interpreted as a reflection of one's mindset or lifestyle choices. These embodied ideals of the liberated body, normalized within the Rainbow family, rest on the idea of personal subjectivity and self-transformation. They provide a shared framework that binds participants together, a collective identity in opposition to mainstream society and its binary, rational worldview, mind versus body. Within the gatherings, these ideals represent a common vision of life centered on personal renewal through self-work and reconnection with nature. Through constant self-awareness, physical challenges in contact with nature, ascetic practices, and relationships with others who are also committed to personal growth, Rainbow gatherings give participants the chance to experience themselves as free and authentic. For those who take part, the experience is truly transformative. People often describe it as a spiritual healing or a process of deprogramming, of releasing fear and breaking away from all the conditioning that shapes how people live in society, the habits and fears that restrain both individual bodies and the collective social body, physically and morally. At Rainbow, people learn to live autonomously, not necessarily by building permanent self-sufficient communities, but by developing personal practices that help them take charge of their own lives, health, and well-being. These practices are based on the belief that by reconnecting body, mind, and nature, and by recognizing how they influence each other, every person has the power to shape their own destiny, and, by extension, contribute to transforming humanity as a whole. On one hand, the idea is that you can heal your body through positive thinking and the curative power of nature. On the other, your mental health and emotional state depend on the choices you make about your way of living. In this sense, the libertarian ideal that guides the Rainbow family is paradoxically grounded in discipline, in maintaining constant self-awareness, and adhering to a particular, even standardized, vision of what a liberated body and life should look like. Since the 1970s, new spiritual movements have often been suspected of cult-like behavior, a suspicion that grew in the 1990s after tragic events such as mass suicides among controversial religious groups, like the Order of the Solar Temple. The Rainbow family hasn't escaped such accusations, whether justified or not. The movement's emphasis on taking personal responsibility for one's body, through its philosophies and practices, can raise concerns about possible psychological or physical influence over individuals' ability to think freely or make independent choices. However, if we look at it through a more understanding, interpretive lens, one that values how participants themselves make sense of what they do, the Rainbow experience can also be seen in light of how modern Western societies encourage individuals to seek and express inner authenticity. As I've discussed elsewhere, the Rainbow family can be understood as a concrete expression of the neoliberal injunction to be an entrepreneur of the self, as Michel Foucault described, a person who treats life as a project of continuous self-improvement, a work always in progress, never complete. This idea is common in the world of self-help and personal development. Rainbow gatherings, then, can be seen as a social framework that allows people to live out this ideal, to feel in control of their lives while sharing that pursuit with others. They provide a space where the conflicting demands of modern life, to be ever more authentic and true to yourself, yet connected to a community, can be explored and made meaningful. In a globalized world marked by insecurity about the present and uncertainty about the future, the Rainbow family offers one way of giving coherence, purpose, and emotional grounding to these contradictions.